Hello guys, what's going on? My name is Zura and today we have a really interesting and useful topic. This topic is a little bit challenging for beginner developers, so I'm going to try to make out everything super clear using examples. Examples are allowed by everyone, right? First of all, in the first part of the video, let me explain what is an interface, how to create and implement it, and in the second part of the video, I'm going to show you a real-world examples why you may need interfaces and in which scenarios you may need. I guarantee that the second part will be really interesting, so stay till the end. Interfaces allow you to define a method's signature without body and force the class to implement the method. According to the most upvoted answer on PHP.net on interfaces, an interface is provided so you can describe a set of functions and then hide the final implementation of those functions in an implementing class. This allows you to change the implementation of those functions without changing how to use it. That's a really useful sentence. We're going to see the example mentioned here and explain it. Let's start creating our first interface and implement it. Creating an interface is really similar to creating a class, just you need to replace your class keyword with interface. Interface, my interface. And that's it. That's an interface. In order to implement the interface, you create a class which implements the interface, like my class implements my interface. All methods inside the interface must be public. So I'm going to create first method public function method 1. Now again my PHP Storm ID gives me hint that you need to implement method 1. So let me save this and create an instance of my class. Okay, now I'm going to try to execute this index.php file, and here is my error. That's exactly what PHP Storm is trying to tell me, that you need to implement this method. Okay, I'm going to hit Alt-Enter and add this method 1 stub. And when I run the code, now the error disappears. The second solution for this is to define the myClass method as an abstract. But in this case, of course, I cannot create an instance from the abstract class. So in this case, if I want to do it like this, I need to create another class myClass2, which extends my class. And finally, I still have to implement this method 1 inside this myClass2. So this is valid, and we won't see error anymore. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes you don't need to create an abstract class, but sometimes you may need. For example, if I have here another method 2, and let's say that I want to implement this method 2 inside my class, public function method 2. And this is already implemented. Now everything looks really clear. We don't see any error, any hint by PHP Storm, so this works fine. So I can, if I have multiple abstract methods in interface, I can implement some of them in the abstract class and leave some of them for the final class. And that's the exact case what I just did. So if I delete this method 2 again, my PHP Storm again gives me warning, and I will see an error because I have method 2 which is not implemented. Okay, let's create constants. Interface can also have constants, but the constants cannot be overridden. So I can define a constant here. Let's define with uppercase. My constant is 1. And I can use this my constant right here, my interface, my constant, and that's valid. That's okay. But if I try to override my constant, that's not going to work. I'm going to see an error. Let's run the code, and here's our error. Interfaces can also have constructors. So if you want to force the user to implement a constructor in its class, you can define a constructor in the interface. So I'm gonna create a construct here as an abstract function. Of course, let me remove the constant because we don't need it. And now again, I have a warning from PHP Storm. Class must be declared abstract or implement method. And I can implement this method here in abstract class myClass or in myClass2. Let's talk about multiple interfaces. Sometimes when I explain interfaces to junior developers for the first time, they say that, oh, it's like the abstract class, right? Well, it's like, but it's not. There are a couple of differences and really big differences. Abstract classes can have normal methods with body, but interfaces cannot have. Abstract classes can have methods with a protected visibility also, but the interfaces cannot. And one really important difference, when you extend from the abstract class, you can extend from one class only, but you can implement multiple interfaces. Okay, let me make this example a little bit easier and I'll remove this abstract class. And we have this class which extends, which implements from my interface. And we don't have constructor, we don't have constant. And we're creating an instance of my class. Okay, super easy. Okay, I have just made the example a little bit easier, removed the abstract class and removed method 2. Now I'm going to create a second interface, copy and paste, my interface 2, which has method 2. And now I can implement from my interface 2 also. And in this case, I have to implement all methods which are in my interface and in my interface 2. In this case, I have to implement my method 2 also. Okay, and I had a question when I was learning interfaces. What will happen if there are methods with the same name declared in both interfaces? And that's really a valid question. So what will happen if method 2 is declared in my interface also? This is absolutely fine for today's PHP. This was a problem in my early ages when I started learning interfaces several years ago, but this is not a problem anymore. So as far as the method signatures are the same, so this is not a problem. But if you have different method signature, like you say that method 2 must return string, while in my interface 2, method 2 should return an integer, that's a problem already. In this case, engine cannot understand which one should take. So if I run the code, we see an error. If I add a string here, we will see another error. So as far as method signatures are the same, and I'm going to change this into string also, that's fine. Interfaces can also extend each other. For example, let me remove this method 2 from my interface and leave only method 1. And I can extend from my interface. And I can remove this my interface from here, and now it does the same thing. My interface now has two abstract methods, method 1 and method 2, and thus my class should implement both. And here's one good news. Interfaces can extend from multiple interfaces, which is not possible in case of classes. So if I create one more interface like my interface 3 with method 3, my interface 2 can extend from both my interface and my interface 3. That's also valid. And in this case, I have to implement, of course, method 3, right? Okay, too much explanation on some basic things. Let's move on the promised examples. This is a promised example from the PHP.NET's most upvoted answer. Okay, here is my database interface, which has a couple of methods. I have created 3 classes which implements these methods. This is MySQL DB class, which implements from database interface and generated all the methods and just printing which method is called and returning the values what is required in the method signature. Here boolean is required to be returned and I'm just returning true. Here array is required to be returned, so I'm just returning an empty array. And that's MySQL DB, which implements from the database interface, and the similar scenario happens in REST DB class and SQLite DB class. And I have created application class, which accepts database interface instance in its constructor and saves it in a public variable DB. And in my index PHP, I am creating an instance of the application, creating an instance of the SQLite database, passing as the first and only argument in the application, which is right here, and finally calling the methods. Okay, let's run the example 1, and here is my output. Calling method SQLite DB get orders, SQLite DB get order by ID, and so on. This means that SQLite DB's methods were called. Okay, what is this? Let's imagine that my database is in SQLite. So in this case, I'm going to use new SQLite DB instance. If I decide that I want to change my database into MySQL, I'm going to comment this out and activate MySQL and pass their MySQL DB instance and run the code, and now MySQL DB's methods are called. And in MySQL DB right now I'm just outputting calling method, but of course you are going to implement the selecting orders from the database. In SQLite DB you are going to implement selecting orders from SQLite database. And I have REST DB class also, which is pretty much the similar as those two ones. But instead, maybe you don't have local database, but you are using some RESTful service to getting orders or deleting or creating and so on. And in this case, you can implement making a CURL request here in the methods. And if I change this into REST DB, additional comma, here I see that REST DB methods are called. Okay, this was example 1. Now let's move on and see real-world example 2. Okay, let's imagine that I'm working on caching. The caching makes websites so fast, so I decided to create my cache component, which will cache the web pages or data in somewhere. But I don't know where to cache my data. I may decide that a little bit later, so I may save it in the file, in the Redis, in the memcache, or I don't know right now. So I created cache interface, which has 3 methods: to set, to get, and invalidate cache. And right now I created 2 instances, file cache and Redis cache, and after this video I'm going to add memcache also. So in the file cache and in the Redis cache also I have these unimplemented methods, so I don't see this PHP storm warning right now. And again, the same scenario happens in application PHP. I have this cache interface instance and save it in a global variable, and in the index PHP I am creating the application, passing there the first instance of file cache, and I'm caching something. Okay, let's implement these methods. I'm gonna replace these to-dos quickly using regular expressions. So replace all, go to the Redis cache and do the same thing. And now let's run example 2. Calling method file cache set, file cache get, and so on. Okay, now I'm gonna go to the index PHP, activate Redis cache, because Redis cache is much faster and it doesn't load file system. Run this, and now calling method Redis cache. So changing just single line, I can switch from one caching system into another. And this approach is used in today's modern frameworks like Laravel, Symfony, E framework, and so on. This was example 2. Now let's see example 3. Okay, I will be really quick on this example because I think you understand the basic idea. So here I'm doing this similar thing. Just I have logger interface. I want to log everything basically. I don't want to lose some information, so I'm logging everything. But I haven't decided yet where to log. Maybe I can log in the files, in the database, or maybe even I can send the logs using CURL somewhere in this central logging system. I have created this logger interface, and I have created also abstract logger class, which extends from the interface, and I have implemented 4 out of 5 methods. So I have here 5 methods, and I have implemented 4. But I have not implemented log method. So when I call info, it basically calls log method, just passing the first argument info and so on. And here is my file log and db log PHP classes. And as you can see, I have a warning, I need to implement log method. I'm going to hit Alt Enter and generate the method for both of them. And as I did previously using regex, I'm going to replace this to do. Okay, so every other method is basically implemented in the abstract class, and I have implemented the log method in the class itself, file log and db log. That's because this is the only place where I should decide whether I want to save the log message in the database, in the file, in the some RESTful system, or etc. So, and the similar thing happens in index.php, creating an application, giving the logger instance, here's my application, and calling the methods, up logger error, success, and so on. And now let's run the code again. And here I see calling methods file logs log. So finally, basically, log method is called for everything, no matter it's info or warning and so on, but I'm gonna print also here the level. So here is the level for dblog, and here is the level for file log. Run it again, and calling method error for file log, success, warning, and here is custom debug, which is added in the index.php because I have access to the log method also because it's public. Okay, I'm going to switch to the dblog, run the code, and now I see the dblogs method is called. And the last example about multiple interfaces. Okay, here I have 2 really simple interfaces with one method. Swimmable interface and flyable interface. Weird names, right? So, and they have 2 methods, swim and fly. And I have created 2 classes, penguin and bird. Bird implements flyable interface and of course implements a fly method. Just outputs, I'm bird, I'm flying. In penguin, we have the following output. And I have created duck class, which implements both swimmable and flyable interface and thus implements both methods. Let's go to the index.php and see what's going on here. I'm creating 3 instances, bird, penguin, and duck. And bird, of course, has only fly method, penguin has a swim method, and duck has both methods. Let me comment this var dump for now and see the output. It's example 4. And you see the output, right? Okay, and here I have created canFly method, which checks the following, which accepts the object and checks the following. If the object is instance of flyable interface, then I return true. And now I'm going to uncomment my var dump, and as you can guess, bird is an instance of flyable interface because bird class implements flyable interface. So we should see true here. Penguin is not an instance of flyable interface because it only implements swimmable interface, and the duck implements both. So, can you guess what will be the output of the following 3 var-dumps? I'll give you 2 seconds. 1, 2. Okay, enough. I'm going to run the code. True, false, and true. I would like to know your example, so if you can come up to a better example, please let me know in the comment section below. If I helped you understanding what is an interface, feel free to like, subscribe, and share. This is the end of this video, and see you in the next video on traits.